Why do empires raise taxes before they fall? Or put it another way, why does the bill always arrive right before the party ends? That's the question. In the beginning of an empire's rise, taxes feel light because growth does the heavy lifting. Commerce expands, new lands or new industries add revenue, and the state can fund armies, roads, and prestige without squeezing its citizens. Later, when growth slows and commitments don't, deficits appear. Debt bridges the gap for a while. When lenders start to doubt, the bridge cracks, and that's when taxes rise. Sometimes it's the obvious kind. Rates go up, exemptions disappear. Sometimes it's the hidden kind. Money is diluted and prices jump. Economists call that the inflation tax. Citizens just call it life getting more expensive. Late Rome is the oldest, clearest example. Early Rome financed itself through conquest, spoils, tribute, and expanding tax bases. As expansion stalled, the empire still had legions to pay, borders to defend, and a capital to feed. Administrators responded the way administrators always do, by tightening the net. Tax registers got more aggressive. Obligations were tied to professions and land, so people couldn't slip away. When that wasn't enough, emperors clipped and debased silver coins to stretch resources. On paper, the accounts balanced. In markets, trust didn't. Prices rose, barter returned in places, and the productive class did what people do under fiscal pressure. They hid income, moved, or stopped investing. The tax take struggled despite higher rates because the base was shrinking. The cycle turned vicious: weaker growth, heavier extraction, weaker growth again. Rome didn't fall in a single tax edict. It slid into a world where revenue needs outran willingness to pay. Jump to Spain in the age of American silver. The mountain of Potosi poured treasure into Seville. For a time, it felt like magic, money without the messy work of building a diversified economy. But easy inflows act like a narcotic. The state borrowed against tomorrow's silver to fight today's wars. Domestic industries atrophied, and the flood of coin pushed prices up across Europe. That is inflation as fiscal policy. Even if unintended, the crown financed itself by spreading a silent levy through rising prices. When silver production faltered and creditors demanded cash, the monarchy did what strained states do: raise taxes and default. More than once. Here, the trap was different from Rome's, but rhymed: a shrinking real economy beneath expanding fiscal promises. When faith in the future income stream faded, formal taxes rose and the inflation tax compounded them. Now Britain, after World War II, no empire managed finance more professionally than the British at their peak. But even professionalism has limits when the balance sheet explodes. 2 world wars left debt north of 200% of GDP. The empire was dissolving. The pound's aura dimmed. Britain chose a hard, admirable path: honor the debt, rebuild, and maintain a social contract at home. That choice required revenue. High marginal tax rates endured for decades. Price controls and rationing persisted. Financial repression, controlling rates below inflation, helped erode the real value of debt. That's another flavor of the inflation tax. Savers' purchasing power subsidizes the state. Britain survived and prospered later, but the imperial era ended. Raising taxes didn't cause that ending. It signaled a fiscal reality that power could no longer hide. What ties these stories together isn't a single number, it's a sequence. First, promises outgrow the economy. Military commitments, pensions, subsidies, prestige projects, pick your mix. Second, deficits normalize. Temporary borrowing becomes permanent. Third, confidence frays. Creditors demand higher yields, citizens doubt delivery, political coalitions fracture. Fourth, the toolkit shifts from growth to extraction. Raise explicit taxes, widen the base, enforce harder, or let inflation run a bit hotter than honesty would admit. Fifth, extraction weakens the base you're taxing. People work around the rules, push activity into shadows, or leave. By the time you see the heavy tax hand, the deeper problem, trust, has already broken. There's a modern name for the moment when budgets start steering the central bank: fiscal dominance. When debt is large and rates must stay low to keep interest costs tolerable, the monetary authority is no longer fully independent. It can talk about price stability, but the bond math sets boundaries. If growth is too weak to outrun interest and primary deficits, inflation becomes the flexible lever. Whether deliberate or not, it taxes cash holders and bondholders to shrink the real burden. Voters rarely vote for it. They feel it anyway. Does every tax hike signal collapse? Number. States raise revenue for many reasons, including good ones: war survival, nation building, safety nets. What matters is the context. Rising taxes alongside strong productivity and broad-based growth can be sustained. Rising taxes alongside weak growth, capital flight, and creeping debasement are late-cycle behaviors. They don't guarantee a fall, they reveal a squeeze. Trust is the hinge. When citizens believe the state will spend wisely and treat them fairly, they tolerate sacrifices. When they don't, the same measures backfire. Late Rome's edicts hardened people's will to escape. Spain's windfall bred dependence and then anger. Post-war Britain, for all the pain, retained enough trust to grind through a long adjustment. Trust lowers the political interest rate, what leaders pay to ask more of their people. Lose it, and every fiscal tool gets blunter. So why do empires raise taxes before they fall? Because they run out of cheaper options. Cutting spending is politically explosive. Growing out of the problem takes time. Borrowing at reasonable rates requires confidence. When confidence is the missing ingredient, extraction is the only fast lever left. The irony is painful. The very act of squeezing, through rates, rules, or inflation, often accelerates the loss of trust that made squeezing necessary. What should we take from this, not as emperors, but as people trying to navigate late-cycle behavior? First, watch the composition of revenue, not just the headline rate. Sudden base broadening, windfall levies, or temporary surtaxes that linger tell you more than a rate tweak. Second, watch the monetary fiscal dance. If inflation runs persistently above target while policy insists it's transitory, assume the inflation tax is doing quiet work. Third, mind portability. In every era, the mobile, capital, skills, ideas move first when extraction rises. The less mobile pay, more. Finally, remember the alternative path. States that rebuild trust before markets force them by setting credible medium-term plans, aligning spending with realistic revenue, and letting independent monetary policy finish the job, avoid the ugliest version of the cycle. It's slower and less dramatic. It's also how you keep a currency, an economy, and a social contract intact. Empires don't raise taxes because they love pain. They raise them because the math leaves little choice. When growth falters and debt crowds the stage, someone will pay, through the check you write or the purchasing power you lose. History's warning is simple. The longer leaders delay an honest reckoning, the more the reckoning looks like a squeeze. And the longer citizens wait to demand credibility over spectacle, the more likely the bill arrives all at once.